A few years ago, in the northern parts of Sweden, I'm going out for a nice evening of fishing. I am what I guess is called a fishing supervisor. I checked that the other fishermen got their licenses at a certain area of lakes and streams. This is in late summer, and I have been doing my round, which I usually end with going to a small lake and fly fish for some trout. This lake, or pond, is pretty deep in the forest, and I rarely meet someone there. Actually, Eve never met someone there. This lake looks kind of like a crater. A perfect round circle that's perhaps 100 meters in diameter. It contains a natural population of perch and trout. It's a warm summer evening with a slight breeze. The birds are chirping and the fish is rising to all the insects spawning on the surface. I rig my gear and aim for one of the fish rising to the right of me. The same second as my fly lands on the surface, it is like someone pauses the time. The sun hides behind a cloud. The wind stops blowing. The birds are suddenly silent and the fish stops eating. A smell rises from the ground I'm standing on. It smells like something dead, something rotten, like I have a carcass buried under my feet. All of a sudden, I am aware there is something walking out of the forest behind me, maybe 10 to 15 meters behind me. It's like I can see it in the corner of my eye, but I still really can't see it. Every hair on my body is on its end, and it is suddenly very cold around me. The thing watching me just stands there, and I don't have the courage to turn around at all. I see my fly sink to the bottom, but I can't move. I can't do anything about it because I don't dare to move. Then the wind hits me, and it carries the awful smell away. The sun hits me again. A bird is singing somewhere in the forest, and the almost overtaking feeling of being watched lets go of me. I turn around, and there is nothing there. On the lake, the fish starts rising again. I pack my gear and throw the backpack on my back and run for it, through the forest to my car. I hit the gas and drive like a maniac until I find the big road and civilization again. I park at the side of the road and say to myself, what the fuck was that? My heart is still racing. I haven't visited this lake since this happened, and I know no one else who has either. What do you guys think it was? I've probably visited this place 20 times before this happened and never felt anything like it. The only thing is that I am always afraid of bears when visiting it. I do fish at a lot of ponds and lakes that's pretty deep in the forest. There's always a lot of wildlife in these places. Deers, moose, fox, and the occasionally wolf, bobcat, and bear. I'm never afraid of meeting one except when I've been visiting this particular lake. Encounter. Not my personal encounter, but my brother's. We live right on the Chattahoochee and around 4 miles from Lake Lanier, the most haunted lake in the USA. The woods around that area are 100% haunted. Sometimes you get this oppressive, you are being watched, and it is not friendly feeling. I used to smoke weed out there, and the oppressive, evil feeling would sometimes follow me until I left the woods and got in my car. I've even felt it during the day and heard things I can't describe. It's the kind of evil that quiets the birds, silences bugs, and makes the trees stop swaying. There's even a patch of wood in my own neighborhood that I don't go into anymore because of the evil feeling I described. I haven't seen anything, but I've definitely felt it and heard it. My brother and his friend, on the other hand, did see something. They were smoking weed in the woods on the banks of the Chattahoochee, this little secluded ledge of mud and trees right off of a walking trail where the dirt dips down towards the river. It was around 12, almost 1 a.m. They heard the normal sounds of the forest, but they were hearing footsteps walking around and started talking to each other about it. They speculated on what it was, and one of them said out loud, "That's gotta be a deer." Well, whatever was listening to them took offense. Didn't like being compared to deer. My brother and his friend felt the same oppressive feeling I have felt many of times before and turned around. This shadow, around 9 foot tall, is standing at the top of the dip with glowing white eyes leering down at them. The two of them didn't say a word, didn't even look at each other. They just scrambled up the right side of the dip and started running as fast as they could for the car. I've been to that dip in the dirt by the river a lot. I went there recently and heard something strange during the day that caused me to start running for my car as fast as I could. My brother was in the car about 1,500 feet away and heard it too. It was like an organic chainsaw mixed with a high-pitched bird. I had forgotten my bag, which had the keys to the car. I snagged it as fast as I could and just started running. The sound followed me, like it was pursuing me. I'm out there a lot and know most of the bird sounds, and that didn't sound like anything I've ever heard. The road leading to it doesn't seem safe either. My brother and the same friend were driving at night with the floodlights on, and they saw something about 9 foot tall and humanoid peek out from behind a tree and watched them as they drove. My bro has a fort built in those woods. Last week, I went to the fort at night with him and his friends, and he went on a speech about how nothing crosses the fence the fort was built up against. Almost felt like he was challenging whatever it was to cross the fence and do so. We all begged him to stop. That mentality wasn't good for the acid trip we were about to take. My gut tells me we will definitely be seeing more spooks. My husband and I were just discussing this again, because it's a total WTF experience that makes me throw up my hands when I talk about it. But it's led me to all sorts of internet deep dives periodically. 3 years ago, we hiked the TCT with a friend. One night we were nestled in a super cool spot on Death Canyon Shelf, our backs to a sheer face of rock. A raging thunderstorm came through as we were sleeping, and I've never heard such loud sounds reverberating off of the cliffs. Terrifying, awe-inspiring. Anyways, I'm a light sleeper, so I was awake a lot of the night. It was pouring ice-cold rain that turned to sleet that blanketed our tent and camp. Around 3:30 in the morning, when I was lying there completely awake, I heard what sounded like a woman's voice. It sounded enough in the distance that it wasn't as if she were in our camp, but close enough that I could clearly catch that she was singing a melody. A completely haunting song that sounded like mourning, like an old folk song in another language. I told my husband and friend the next morning it sounded like sad yodeling. Ridiculous, I know, but it was very throaty, beautiful and haunting. Now I wonder, a native song. It was 3:30 in the morning during a raging thunder and sleet storm. If, by some chance, some poor soul even happened to be hiking past, they would not have been singing. Pounding sleet, rain, and very close together peals of thunder and lightning. But we were so far away from the trail, that couldn't be. There were no sites occupied near us. Honestly, it stuck with me. I know I may get roasted, but it was so peculiar, and when it comes up with our buddy or my husband, I just shrug and say, I swear, I know what I heard. Does anyone have similar experiences while backpacking? I hope this isn't too vague a question, and please allow me to add some context. A couple years ago, I did bicycle tour from Eugene, Oregon to Lagunitas, California, just north of San Francisco. To save money, I typically would drag my rig into the woods of a nearby national forest and do dispersed camping for free. I was on a shoestring budget, to say the least. If you know the basic geography of that part of Oregon, you know I had to bike west from Eugene through the coastal range and meet the Pacific coast, which I would then follow to my final destination. However, once I reached the coast, in order to keep finding free camping, I would inevitably have to venture inland, into the woods most nights, sometimes as far as 15 miles. Now, I've spent a significant amount of time outdoors in remote areas out west and in the upper Midwest, where I was raised. I'm familiar with the sometimes eerie silence the woods can take on when you're truly in the middle of nowhere, or the heightened vigilance that setting brings on. However, I had never before felt an oppressive, dark, dreadful energy in my environment like I did alone in the woods of Southwest Oregon. The feeling of wrongness was a common occurrence when I stopped somewhere to evaluate a campsite. I often felt a strong sense of claustrophobia in those woods and often felt that I was not alone. A strong feeling of paranoia became a nightly feature on that leg of the trip, and my sleep schedule suffered considerably. Keep in mind, I was stone cold sober on this tour. Somehow, I powered on and I never saw any sort of creature or entity, but I still can't shake the feeling that there's something evil in those forests. Once again, I emphasize that I am well-traveled in the US, experienced in the outdoors, and have never once felt that way anywhere else I have been. The woods of Southwest Oregon inexplicably freaked me the fuck out. Anyone had an experience in this part of the country? Are there any urban legends unique to that area? Google doesn't reveal too much. At At one of my brother's Boy Scout camping trips, I was playing in this one river right by our campsite with a few boys only a little bit older than me. One of the boys had found a deer bone in the river, so now they were all looking for pretty rocks and crystals and bones. I joined them, and after a long while I too saw a bone. A bunch of little bones held together by what seemed like pale, squishy moss and normal animal cartilage. I thought nothing about why part it must have been or what animal. I just wanted to get it out. As soon as I touched the bones, they closed under my touch at its joints and immediately got that super heavy, sick feeling in my gut. My mom was in college to be a nurse, so ever since the age of 5, I was always helping her, pulling her flashcards and watching the videos, reading the textbooks with her. I really wanted to be a coroner and became obsessed with studying human biology and anatomy 24/7/365, and with my mom in college, I got to be a part of a lot of experiments and dissections. So by 8, I had seen enough skeletons, read enough textbooks, and constructed enough bodies to fully believe that the bones undoubtedly was a hand. It was half stuck under a big rock, and I didn't want to try to pull it now knowing it was a hand for risk pulling it apart by accident. So I started trying to lift the rock it was stuck under, which took a few tries, but eventually I lifted it enough, and as soon as I did, the hand dislodged, and the currents quickly swooped it away down the river. This part may be TMI, but it touched my ankle when the currents was taking it away, and it is a feeling I will never ever forget. It was like it was giving my ankle a quick goodbye caress, and I shrieked and dropped the rock. Naturally, the older kids looked at me, and I told them there was a spider, and then quickly tried chasing the hand down the stream, but there was no point. I got the hell out of that river, climbed up the bank, and sat silently by the campfire with the rest of the adults, and didn't tell a soul. Part of me didn't want to get in trouble for being in the river when I wasn't allowed to. The other part didn't think the adults would believe me, and I didn't fully believe myself either. I still don't fully know if my 8-year-old mind was overreacting or not. I still have the exact moment the fingers curled, the way it bent at the joints, how it felt, all stored away in my memory that my brain occasionally likes to replay randomly. I didn't a soul about it until I was 15 and confessed to my mom through tears after the memory resurfaced again and re-rattled me. She sort of stared at me sympathetically and said something along the line of, "I believe that you know what you're talking about, and I can see it impacted you. But is there a possibility you were 8 and it was something else?" I still don't know if it was a hand or not, but it scared the Jesus out of me and still makes me sick to remember. So, in Lake Sonoma up the Warm Springs arm of the lake is a road that was drowned when the dam was completed. This being a flood-controlled dam, a lot of land that was previously occupied was put underneath a lot of water. Well, now we fish and boat over these areas. I used to work at the visitor center when I was but a wee volunteer looking for credits for volunteering, and I stumbled across some fishermen and their kids who told this story to us at the ranger station. Apparently, the 2 fathers had gone out fishing and had opted to do late-night catfishing. About 2 to 3 a.m., they are boating over the far north end of the Warm Springs arm when they hear what sounds like children. They cut their trawling motor and listen. To them, it sounds like kids calling for help and crying. At this point, they're looking at the hills and trying to see if there are kids lost or something. After a few moments, a light comes from under the water. They described it as looking like a fire, but underwater. Sure enough, the voices are coming from the direction of the light under the water. It is at this point they freak out, gun the motor, and book it away from the mysterious fire under the water that seems to be the source of crying children. So we get told this story, and myself and a park ranger listen intently, ask for them to point out the spot on the map, and overall gather as much info as possible. They head out for some day fishing, and we stay to do research. Turns out that old road that was submerged by Lake Sonoma is pretty old. Like, first American settlers in the region old. One thing to know about Lake Sonoma, it's not a super busy place. When it is, it's the fee super bad accidents that happen every year or so from drunk boaters. My park ranger mentor and I had literally nothing better to do than spend the day learning more about this weird experience. We pulled in a local historian who worked with a group called the Friends of Lake Sonoma. We asked him about the road and pointed out on a map. I shit you not, before we can explain why we want to know about this random road, the historian responds, "Oh, that's a road with some history. There was a really bad car accident out there, in fact, way back before safety standards for cars. Car rolled after the driver lost control, and only the driver and his wife got out. They couldn't get their kids out though. The car lit on fire and burned to death the kids in the back seat. And that's the story about how 16-year-old me learned what it's like to feel a shiver go down his spine. It may not be underwater only since it involved an incident that technically happened on dry land, but it seems the haunting itself did remain despite the flooding of its area.